The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Council chambers stretched impossibly high above Dr. Emily Walker's head, its transparent panels refracting starlight into rainbow patterns across the polished obsidian floor. As Earth's leading xenodiplomat, she had spent years preparing for this moment. Yet nothing in her extensive training had prepared her for the wave of contempt radiating from the assembled alien representatives. The human species presents itself for consideration. The announcement echoed through the chamber, each word translated simultaneously into 47 different languages. Emily stood straighter, conscious of the dozens of alien eyes fixed upon her, some clustered in compounds, others positioned in anatomically impossible arrangements, but all conveying the same emotion: disdain. The Vraxian ambassador Krithak rose from his hovering seat, his iridescent scales shifting from deep purple to a mocking shade of amber. "The Council recognizes Earth's petition," he said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into crisp English. "Though one wonders why we waste our time with such primitive applications." Emily's diplomatic training screamed at her to maintain her pleasant expression, even as her fingers twitched with the muscle memory of her military days. Days she carefully omitted from her credentials. 10 years of special operations experience, carefully hidden beneath degrees in xenolinguistics and cultural integration. Krithak's head frills expanded, a gesture Emily recognized as their equivalent of a smirk. "Perhaps we should review the applicant's qualifications." Without waiting for a response, he activated the chamber's holographic display system. Images of Earth's history flickered to life around Emily. Wars, conflicts, environmental disasters. But Krithak hadn't done his homework thoroughly enough. He'd cherry-picked the worst moments without understanding their context. "Observe," Krithak continued, his scales rippling with amusement. "A species that spent millennia killing itself over imaginary lines on their planet's surface. A species that nearly destroyed their only habitat before stumbling upon basic spaceflight." He paused for effect. And most telling of all, the images shifted to scenes of human sports, boxing matches, football games, Olympic competitions. They still ritualize combat for entertainment. They deliberately engage in physical conflict for pleasure. Scattered laughter echoed through the chamber, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and subsonic rumbles. Emily's smile never wavered, even as she noted which species laughed the loudest. The Aldarians. Interesting. Their species lacks adrenal glands. The Zentari, with their hive mind consensus. The Murith, who evolved past individual competition millennia ago. Each laugh was a data point, each mockery a revelation of weakness. "Is this not proof," Krithak declared, his scales now a brilliant gold of triumph, "that they remain savages? They claim to be civilized, yet their entertainment still revolves around primitive displays of physical dominance. Their media glorifies conflict. Their economy thrives on competition rather than cooperation. They even ingest chemical stimulants daily just to function." More laughter. Emily thought of the coffee she'd had that morning, wondering how these advanced species would handle a simple cup of human caffeine. "The Council's decision is clear," Krithak announced. "Earth's application for membership is not merely denied. It is rejected with prejudice. Humanity will remain quarantined to their solar system until they have evolved beyond their barbaric nature." He turned his compound eyes directly to Emily. "Perhaps in another 1,000 years, they will be worthy of reconsideration, if they survive their primitive urges that long." Emily bowed. Exactly 5 degrees, the minimum required by protocol, and turned to leave. She felt Krithak's smug satisfaction like a physical force at her back. He, like the rest of the Council, had forgotten one of humanity's most primitive traits: the ability to learn from failure, to adapt, to plan. They had meant to put humanity in its place. Instead, they had given Emily Walker, and through her, all of humanity, something far more dangerous than membership. They had given them a purpose. As she walked from the chamber, her mind was already racing with plans. The Council thought humans primitive for their capacity for conflict, their drive for competition, their ability to deceive. They would learn, too late, that these weren't weaknesses. They were weapons. The Cheyenne Mountain Complex hadn't been used for military operations in decades. Now, 3 months after the Council's rejection, its repurposed depths hummed with new purpose. Dr. Emily Walker stood before a holographic display, watching as it cycled through profiles of Council species. "Tell me again why we're meeting in this prehistoric bunker." Marcus Chen slouched in his chair, his former Wall Street swagger at odds with the austere surroundings. The quantum trading prodigy looked more comfortable in designer suits than military installations. "Because, Mr. Chen," Major James Rodriguez stepped from the shadows, his scared face illuminated by the holograms. "Sometimes the oldest tricks are the best ones. The Council's sensors can't penetrate this much rock, and they're too arrogant to check manually." Dr. Catherine Sullivan, Cat to her friends, looked up from her tablet. "Speaking of arrogance, you should see these psychological profiles. The Council species have literally evolved beyond certain emotional responses. They've engineered aggression and competition out of their genetics." "Which makes them predictable," Emily said, flicking through the holograms. "Major Rodriguez, show them what you found." Rodriguez grinned, the expression making his scar tissue dance. "Watch this." He pulled up footage from the Council chambers. "See how the Vraxian ambassadors' scales shift color. They're so proud of their emotional control, but their biology betrays them. Every color shift is involuntary, a perfect tell. And they can't lie," Kat added, excitement creeping into her voice. "I mean physically can't. Their species evolved in such perfect harmony. They never developed deception. They think they're superior for it." Marcus sat up straighter. "You're telling me these advanced aliens never invented poker?" "Better than that," Emily smiled. "They can't recognize lying in others. They've lost the ability to detect deception because they never needed it. Their superior evolution is actually a weakness," Rodriguez finished. "One of many." The holographic display shifted to show more Council species. Emily pointed to each in turn. "The Aldarians, no adrenaline response. The Zentari, perfect consensus in their hive mind, means no concept of individual action. The Murith, engineered out their competitive instincts generations ago. All these primitive traits they mock us for," Kat said, "they're actually sophisticated survival mechanisms. Our capacity for deception, our fight-or-flight response, our competitiveness. They're not bugs, they're features." Marcus was fully engaged now, his trader's mind seeing the possibilities. "So we're going to outthink the most advanced species in the galaxy by being what? More human?" "Exactly." Emily's smile turned predatory. "Major, show them Operation Trojan." Rodriguez activated another display, showing training facilities across Earth. "We're selecting agents now. People with specific skills. Actors, poker players, hostage negotiators. The Council species can't read human micro-expressions. To them, we're blank slates." "Meanwhile," Kat added, "we're teaching our agents every biological tell, every cultural blind spot we found. The Council thinks they're accepting human cultural attaches and economic advisors. They're actually letting in the most sophisticated infiltration force ever created." Marcus whistled. "And I'm here because you understand chaos." Emily pulled up economic projections. "The Council's markets are perfectly regulated, perfectly controlled. They've never experienced anything like human market dynamics. We need you to design something that will shake their economic foundation." "You want me to crash the galactic economy?" Marcus's eyes gleamed. "Now that's my kind of revenge." "Not crash," Emily corrected. "Transform. Every part of this plan needs to be subtle. We're not going to beat them with brute force. We're going to change them so fundamentally they won't even realize it's happening until it's too late." Rodriguez laid out a series of tablets. "These are your new identities. From now on, this facility is our only contact point. The Council thinks they've confined us to our solar system. Fine. We'll show them just how dangerous a cornered animal can be." Emily looked at her assembled team. The soldier, the psychologist, the trader. Each brought something the council had dismissed as primitive, something they'd evolved beyond. Each would help prove that humanity's greatest strengths were the very things the council thought made them weak. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "let's show the galaxy what savages can do." The Zentari diplomatic attaché never noticed how his human assistant's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Agent Sarah Martinez, formerly of the CIA's NOC division, maintained her cover flawlessly as she organized the ambassador's schedule. The Zentari, with their hive mind consensus, couldn't comprehend individual deception. They never questioned why she worked such long hours, or why she seemed to always be present during sensitive communications. Perfect form. Cat Sullivan's voice purred through Sarah's subdermal communicator. "Your micro-expressions haven't slipped once in 3 weeks." In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, Emily Walker watched feeds from dozens of similarly placed agents. Each operative had been handpicked by Rodriguez for their unique skills in deception and adaptation. Former actors, spies, and con artists now served as humanity's silent ambassadors, exploiting the Council's blind spots with surgical precision. "Status report," Emily commanded, her voice reaching all active operatives. "Agent Chen, embedded with Aldarian Commerce Ministry," came the first reply. "They've accepted my proposal to study their trading algorithms. These aliens literally can't conceive of insider trading. They think sharing market data shows advanced transparency." "Agent Patel, Vraxian Cultural Exchange," another voice chimed in. "You're going to love this. They've started implementing human-style diplomatic gatherings. They think they're studying us, but they're actually adopting our social manipulation techniques without realizing it." Emily allowed herself a small smile. The council races were so convinced of their superiority that they never questioned why humans seemed so eager to learn from them. Every cultural exchange was a carefully orchestrated opportunity to map their weaknesses. "Major Rodriguez," she called out, "how's our military infiltration progressing?" The scared veteran appeared on her screen, now wearing the elaborate ceremonial robes of a Murith combat instructor. "These poor bastards have no concept of misdirection. I'm teaching them primitive human martial arts as a historical curiosity. They're so fascinated by our obsolete combat techniques that they don't realize they're being conditioned to think like us." Cat's psychological analysis had proven invaluable. The council species, in engineering out their aggressive impulses, had lost the ability to recognize subtle threats. They saw humanity's capacity for deception as a weakness, never understanding that it was this very trait that made them invisible to the Council's advanced security systems. New development. Marcus's voice cut through the communications. "The Eldarians just gave me access to their central banking network to demonstrate primitive human financial concepts. They literally can't imagine that anyone would abuse this access. It's like they've never heard of a bank heist." "Remember," Emily cautioned, "we're not here to steal or destroy. This is about transformation. Every system you access, every protocol you study, is groundwork for what's coming." The feeds showed her operatives moving through alien society like ghosts, a human secretary accidentally leaving reports about Earth's entertainment industry where curious alien youth would find them. A maintenance worker shamefully introducing alien specimens to human sports broadcasts, each small action part of a greater plan. Controller Zhang, reporting from Galactic Hub Station, another agent called in. "The Council's private security forces are completely dependent on AI threat assessment. They'd got no protocols for human-style social engineering. I've got access to their entire command network through nothing but coffee breaks and casual conversation." Emily watched the pieces falling into place. The Council had dismissed humanity as primitive, never realizing that their long evolution had stripped them of crucial survival traits. Their inability to lie meant they couldn't recognize deception. Their consensus-based thinking left them vulnerable to individual action. Their engineered emotional control made them blind to human psychological warfare. Next phase initiates in 3 days. She announced to her network of shadows, "Prepare your positions." As her agents acknowledged the order, Emily studied the council chamber feed. Krithak was there, his scales that same smug amber as he lectured about primitive species. He had no idea that his personal aide, trained by Rodriguez himself, was already in position. The council thought they had contained humanity within their solar system. They never considered that by the time they announced that quarantine, humanity's infiltration was already complete. "Let's show them," Emily whispered, "just how dangerous primitives can be." The emergency alert flashed across the Galactic Council's defense network. Drachnid pirates had seized a major trade vessel in the Carina sector. The Council's AI-driven response fleet arrived promptly, assuming their superior technology would ensure a swift victory. They found the pirates' wreckage already floating in space. What manner of weapons did this? The Vraxian commander demanded, his scales shifting to alarmed crimson as he surveyed the debris field. "No energy weapons signatures detected," his science officer reported. "No quantum disruption. No causality inversions. This was done with kinetic weapons, primitive projectiles." The commander's scales paled. "Impossible." Major James Rodriguez's voice crackled through their comm system. "Not impossible. Just human." Footage from the battle played across the council's emergency session. They watched in stunned silence as a small team of human military advisors, who had coincidentally been aboard the trade vessel, systematically dismantled the pirate operation. Emily Walker stood before the council, her diplomatic smile firmly in place. "We understand this might be concerning. Our primitive methods must seem quite shocking." They used the stellar debris as cover, the Eldarian strategic analyst whispered, their crystalline form clouding with confusion. "Our AI dismissed those fragments as irrelevant to combat calculations. And their boarding action." The Mirth coordinator's hive mind struggled to process what they'd seen. They didn't follow any known tactical protocols. They moved, unpredictably. Rodriguez's team had exploited every weakness in the pirates' advanced systems. EMPs knocked out shields calibrated for energy weapons. Physical projectiles bypassed defenses designed to stop exotic particles. And when they boarded, they fought room by room, Krithak observed, his scales showing fear for the first time. "No species has engaged in close-quarter combat in millennia. Our weapons, our tactics, they're all designed for ship-to-ship engagement. A regrettable necessity," Emily assured them. "Obviously, such primitive combat techniques wouldn't interest advanced species, though if you'd like, we could share some basic defensive protocols." Purely as a historical curiosity, the council members glanced at each other. Their species had evolved beyond personal combat, focusing on technological solutions to conflict. None of them had seen hand-to-hand fighting outside of human entertainment broadcasts, which, they had to admit, had become surprisingly popular. "Perhaps," Krithak said carefully, "a cultural exchange would be beneficial, purely for academic purposes." In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, Kat Sullivan watched the council's response with satisfaction. "They're terrified, not just of our capabilities, but of how much they've lost. Their evolution left them vulnerable to exactly the kind of warfare they thought they'd outgrown. The pirates made it too easy," Rodriguez commented, cleaning his ancient but effective projectile weapon. "They copied council tactics exactly. Same weaknesses, same blind spots." Marcus Chen's algorithms had predicted this response perfectly. The council species, faced with the effectiveness of primitive combat, would seek to understand it. They would accept human military advisors, never realizing that each lesson in close-quarter combat, each demonstration of obsolete tactics, was rewiring their approach to conflict. "Status report," Emily vocalized through her neural link as she left the council chamber. "Mirith combat schools are requesting human instructors," Rodriguez reported. "The Eldarians want to study our historical battle techniques." Even the Vraxians are admitting their AI has gaps in tactical understanding. Perfect. Emily's smile never wavered. Initiate Phase 6. Let's show them what primitive human economics can do to their perfect markets. As she walked away, Krithak watched with unprecedented uncertainty. His species had engineered away physical combat in favor of technological warfare. Yet these humans, with their primitive weapons and ancient tactics, had accomplished what the Council's most advanced fleets could not. For the first time, he wondered if evolution could move backwards as well as forwards. And for the first time, he wasn't sure which direction represented progress. Deep in the Cheyenne Mountain complex, Emily's team prepared for the next phase. The Council had dismissed humanity's capacity for violence as primitive. Now they would learn why evolution had never engineered it away. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways. And humanity remembered them all. The Drachnid pirates never saw it coming. Their quantum-shielded vessel, bristling with advanced weaponry, hung broken in space like a gutted fish. Major James Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the helpless trade vessel they'd attempted to hijack, surrounded by the unconscious forms of alien raiders. Primitive problems require primitive solutions, he muttered, ejecting the spent cartridge from his ballistic rifle, a weapon so ancient by Council standards that their shields hadn't even registered it as a threat. Status report. Emily Walker's voice crackled through his neural link. Package delivered. Rodriguez responded, watching his team secure the remaining pirates. Council forces should be arriving in 3, 2, 1. Right on schedule, a Vraxian defense fleet materialized in a flash of quantum displacement. Their scanners swept the area, probably searching for signs of advanced combat, energy weapons, causality bombs, quantum disruptors. They found none. Impossible. The Vraxian commander's translated voice echoed through the comm. How did you neutralize a Class 3 pirate vessel with no energy signatures? Rodriguez allowed himself a grim smile. Would you believe we just shot them? With bullets. In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, Emily watched the Council's military leadership descend into chaos. Their tactical AIs couldn't process what they were seeing. A primitive victory that defied their advanced combat algorithms. The Council's requesting an emergency session, Kat reported, studying the incoming data. Their entire defensive doctrine is based on countering advanced threats. They've got no protocols for handling. What did they call it? Barbarically simple approaches. The footage from Rodriguez's operation played across the Council chamber. They watched in stunned silence as human operators used simple EMP devices to bypass shields designed to stop quantum weapons. Physical projectiles penetrated hulls calibrated against energy attacks. And in close combat, they engaged in personal violence. Krithak's scales shifted to a sickly gray. Hand-to-hand fighting. No species has done that in millennia. Emily finished for him, standing before the Council. Yes, we maintain such primitive capabilities. Purely for historical purposes, of course. The Council members couldn't look away from the footage. Rodriguez's team had exploited every weakness their evolution had created. Species that had engineered away aggression had no defense against old-fashioned human combat training. Their eye-dependent tactics crumbled against unpredictable human strategy. Notice, Rodriguez commented through the link, how none of them have asked about casualties. They've evolved beyond considering personal risk in combat. They don't even think about the human element anymore. Emily addressed the Council with carefully measured concern. We understand this might be disturbing for advanced species. However, given the effectiveness of these primitive methods against the pirates, perhaps some cultural exchange might be beneficial. The Council chamber erupted in overlapping translations as species that had prided themselves on transcending violence faced a harsh reality. Their evolution had left them vulnerable to exactly the kind of warfare they'd abandoned. The Aldarians are already requesting combat training, Cap reported. The Murith want to study our historical battle techniques. Even the Vraxians are admitting their tactical AIs need updating. Perfect, Emily subvocalized. Initiate Phase 6. Let's show them what happens when primitive human economics hits their perfect markets. As she left the chamber, she caught Krithak watching her with his scales, showing an unprecedented pattern, fear mixed with revelation. His species had engineered away physical combat capabilities in favor of technological warfare. Now they were learning that technology wasn't always the answer. In the Cheyenne Mountain complex, Rodriguez cleaned his primitive weapons while watching the Council's military leadership scramble to adapt. They had dismissed humanity's capacity for violence as barbaric. Now they were learning why evolution had never completely engineered it away. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and humanity remembered them all. Marcus Chen stood in the heart of the Eldarian Central Exchange, watching as the perfectly ordered galactic economy began to unravel. He'd spent months designing this moment, this beautiful chaos that no council species could comprehend. Experiencing market fluctuations in sectors 7 through 12, the Eldarian trading AI announced, unable to establish equilibrium. Human consultation requested. Marcus suppressed a smile. Have you tried applying the standard corrections? Affirmative. Results: unpredictable. Market behavior matches no known patterns. The AI's crystalline housing flickered in distress. Trading volumes exceed prediction models by 847%. Back in Cheyenne Mountain, Emily Walker watched the economic chaos spread across galactic markets. Status report. The Vraxian Commodity Exchange is in freefall. Agent Puddle reported, her voice tight with excitement. They've never experienced anything like human-style speculative trading. Their entire economic model is based on perfect information and rational behavior. Cat Sullivan's analysis scrolled across the main screen. The council species engineered out greed, engineered out the gambling instinct. They built their markets on pure logic. They have no defense against human trading psychology. Marcus's voice cut in. You should see their faces. Well, their equivalent of faces. I introduced options trading this morning. The concept of betting on future market movements has crashed 3 different AI systems already. Emily watched the data streams with satisfaction. The council's perfectly ordered economy was dissolving into something new, something alive. They had dismissed human economic systems as primitive, chaotic, inefficient. They were about to learn why that chaos worked. Sir, Controller Zhang reported, the Zentari are requesting emergency consultation. Their hive mind consensus can't handle rapid market decisions. They're literally paralyzed by the speed of human trading. On the main display, market indicators flashed red across all sectors. Council species that had never known want, never experienced scarcity, were suddenly learning about supply and demand. The artificial stability of their planned economy was crumbling. Initiate Phase 2, Emily commanded. Marcus grinned as he introduced the next element. Human-style entrepreneurship. Small businesses began appearing across council space, operating outside their rigid economic frameworks. Street vendors selling real earth food instead of synthesized nutrients. Entertainment venues offering human sports broadcasts. Black markets trading in everything the council considered primitive. The Mirth Financial Authority is trying to ban human trading practices, Agent Martinez reported from her position. But their own people are refusing. They've tasted economic freedom, and they want more. Of course they do, Kat commented. We're not just changing their economy, we're changing their psychology. They engineered out competition, but they can't engineer out its advantages. In the Eldarian Exchange, Marcus watched as alien traders began adopting human practices. They were learning to speculate, to take risks, to seek opportunities. The Council's perfect economic order was being replaced by something more dynamic, more adaptable. Emergency Council session convening, Emily announced. Krithak is demanding explanation for the market disruptions. The Council chamber's feeds showed panic. Species that had prided themselves on transcending material concerns were suddenly facing economic uncertainty. Their perfectly planned society had no framework for handling human-style market dynamics. Honorable Council, Emily addressed them, her diplomatic mask firmly in place. We understand these market fluctuations may seem alarming to advanced species. Perhaps we could offer some primitive human insights into managing economic volatility. Krithak's scales showed a complex pattern of fear and resignation. The Council requests human assistance in stabilizing the galactic economy. Of course, Emily smiled. We'd be happy to share our primitive expertise. As she left the chamber, reports continued flooding in. Council species were abandoning their planned markets in favor of human economic models. Their youth were embracing entrepreneurship, competition, risk-taking, all the traits their ancestors had engineered away. Prepare for Phase 7, Emily commanded her team. It's time to show them what primitive human democracy can do to their perfect political system. The Council had mocked humanity's chaotic markets, their irrational economic behavior. Now that very chaos was transforming their society, one trade at a time. And they had no choice but to adapt, or be left behind in humanity's economic wake. The Zentari collective mind had never experienced individual dissent in its 10,000 years of existence. Yet today, billions of its nodes were thinking something unprecedented. I disagree. Dr. Emily Walker stood before the council chamber, watching the political upheaval she'd orchestrated unfold across 1,000 worlds. We're simply sharing our primitive history of governance, she explained to the panicking council members. For academic purposes, of course. But they're demanding voting rights. Krithak's scales shifted through patterns of distress never before recorded. Individual species members want to make decisions independently of their governing consensus. In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, Kat Sullivan's analysis flashed across the main screen. The concept of democratic self-determination is spreading faster than their social control systems can contain it. They literally have no defense against the idea of individual choice. Status report, Emily vocalized while maintaining her diplomatic composure. The Eldarian youth are organizing protests, Agent Martinez reported. They're using human social media techniques we introduced. The authorities can't understand how their perfect consensus is breaking down. Marcus Chen's voice cut in, barely containing his excitement. You should see their economic forums. They're connecting democratic principles to market freedoms. The Council's entire system of controlled development is unraveling. On the massive display screens, footage streamed in from across Council space. Species that had evolved beyond individual decision-making were rediscovering the power of personal choice. Governance systems based on perfect consensus were crumbling in the face of human-style debate and disagreement. Sir, Rodriguez reported from his position training primitive defense forces, the military hierarchies are splitting. Junior officers are questioning orders. They're learning to think tactically instead of just following AI protocols. Emily addressed the council with careful concern. We understand these. Social disruptions must be disturbing. Perhaps we could offer insights from our primitive experience with managing political dissent. Krithak's scales showed a complex pattern of fear and resignation. You planned this, he said quietly, in uncharacteristic individual speech, rather than his species' usual consensus voice. Planned. Emily's expression remained neutral. How could we plan the natural desire for self-determination? We merely shared our history. How could primitive humans possibly orchestrate something so sophisticated? The irony hung heavy in the chamber. The council had engineered their species toward perfect cooperation, never realizing they were engineering away the very adaptability that had made them strong. The Murith colonies are declaring independence, Controller Zhang reported through the command network. They're using phrases directly from human constitutional documents. The hive mind consensus is fragmenting into individual node governments. Kat's psychological analysis continued updating. They're not just adopting democratic principles, they're rediscovering emotional responses their species engineered away generations ago. Passion, ambition, individual drive. In the council chamber, representatives from formerly unified species were arguing, about the path forward. Species that had never known internal discord were learning about political parties, about representation, about the messy but vital process of democratic governance. Initiate final phase. Emily commanded her network of agents. It's time to transform the council itself. The chamber erupted as junior representatives demanded voting rights within the council structure. Species that had been deemed too primitive for membership were calling for representation. The perfect political order of the galaxy was dissolving into something more chaotic, more vital, more human. They're calling for emergency elections, Marcus reported with satisfaction. First time that phrase has been used in council space in recorded history. Emily watched Krithak struggling to process these changes, his scales cycling through colors that indicated deep philosophical crisis. His species had thought they'd evolved beyond the need for individual political expression. Now they were learning why humanity had kept its primitive democratic instincts. Prepare for the final meeting, she instructed her team. Tomorrow, we reshape the galaxy. The council had mocked humanity's messy democracy, their irrational political passions, their inability to achieve perfect consensus. Now those very traits were transforming their society, one vote at a time. And they had no choice but to adapt, or be left behind in humanity's political awakening. The crystalline dome of the council chamber looked the same as it had 6 months ago, when they'd rejected Earth's membership, but everything else had changed. Emily Walker stood at the center, surrounded by representatives from every species, not just the council races, but dozens of formerly primitive civilizations now demanding their voice. The motion before us, Emily announced, her voice carrying across the chamber in 47 languages, is the dissolution of the current council structure and the establishment of the Galactic Federation. Krithak sat in his hover seat, scales shifting through colors that had no name in his species' traditional emotional spectrum. He was experiencing something entirely new, uncertainty about his species' superiority. Our perfect society, he said quietly, undone by primitives who never evolved beyond their base instincts. Perfect. Emily turned to face him directly. Or stagnant. You engineered away competition, but lost innovation. You removed individual choice, but lost adaptability. You transcended emotion, but lost the drive that makes life worth living. In the Cheyenne Mountain Command Center, Marcus Chen watched the galactic market stabilize under new human-influenced trading systems. The economic integration is complete, he reported. They're actually starting to understand supply and demand as a natural force, not something to be controlled. Military restructuring is proceeding as planned. Rodriguez added, watching feeds from across council space. They're learning to balance tactical systems with human intuition. Some of them are even starting to appreciate hand-to-hand combat as an art form. Kat's final psychological analysis scrolled across the screens. The council species aren't evolving, as they feared. They're remembering. Remembering that evolution isn't just about transcending old traits. It's about knowing which ones to keep. Emily addressed the chamber again. Look around you. Your youth are watching human entertainment, eating human food, trading in human markets. Your militaries are learning human tactics. Your politics are embracing human democracy. Are these signs of primitive contamination? Or are they signs of life returning to a society that had engineered itself into stasis? The chamber erupted in debate. Actual debate, not the careful consensus building of the past. Species that had never known disagreement were learning to argue productively. Races that had engineered away individual choice were rediscovering the power of personal conviction. The vote stands at 89% in favor, Controller Zhang reported through Emily's neural link. Even the holdouts are using democratic process to express their opposition. They don't even realize how far they've come. Krithak rose, his scales settling into a new pattern, one that showed both humility and awakening. When we rejected Earth's membership, he addressed the chamber. We called humans primitive for their aggression, their competition, their emotional responses. We never considered that these traits might be sophisticated adaptations, preserved through millennia of natural selection. Emily smiled. The most primitive assumption is thinking that evolution only moves in one direction. Sometimes, Krithak, the old ways persist because they work. The final vote was nearly unanimous. The Galactic Council was dissolved, replaced by the new Galactic Federation, a democratic institution that balanced AI efficiency with human unpredictability, advanced technology with primitive wisdom. Operation complete, Emily transmitted to her team. Humanity's revenge is accomplished. Not revenge, Kat corrected. Evolution. We didn't destroy their society. We helped it adapt. We didn't defeat the council. We transformed it. In the chamber, Krithak approached Emily with a new color pattern in his scales, one that matched the human emotion of respect. "We thought we were teaching you civilization," he said. "Instead, you taught us how to live again." Emily accepted his gesture with a genuine smile. Perhaps that's the most advanced trait of all, knowing when to remain primitive. Across the galaxy, a new era began. One where advanced technology coexisted with basic instincts, where AI efficiency was balanced with human unpredictability, where evolution meant preserving the best of the past while reaching for the future. The Council had feared humanity would contaminate their perfect society with primitive traits. Instead, humanity had reminded them why those traits had evolved in the first place. Sometimes, the old ways were the best ways, and humanity remembered them all.